often skills go together. So we have, for example, right now, we're doing speaking and you are doing listening.
Okay.
And if I send you an email...
I'm going to read it.
And I write it.
And I'm going to write back to you.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about reading and listening, I think. Reading first, maybe. What have you read today?
Well, when I woke up, I read my emails. So I always do that first thing in the morning.
Me too.
We get a daily paper delivered, so I read some of the headlines of
the paper.
Yes,
I read an article online. I read an article about some politics online this morning, and I read my emails. And I came to the car park and I read instructions for what I had to do in the car park. What did you read?
Well, I came to work by bus this morning, and I got a different bus from usual, and I had to read the timetable.
All right.
And then
did you do anything on the bus?
On the bus, I always read a novel.
So when we're talking about reading a novel and reading the sign in the car park or reading instructions about the bus, do we read those in the same way or do we read them in different ways? We read them in different ways,
we read them in different ways,
okay.
Yeah.
So when we're reading a novel and we're reading for general kind of interest or just to get the story, that's skim reading, isn't it? Reading for global understanding or general understanding. Whereas with my car park thing, I wanted to know how much was the car park, how long could I stay there, and where did I have to go for my particular spot. That's not general understanding, that's
reading for detail.
Reading for detail, exactly.
And you want to avoid getting a fine.
Exactly. So I was scan reading. I was looking for particular information. How much does it cost? Where do I have to go? Then there's the kind of reading that we did, both of us this morning, when we read that particular newspaper article that we were particularly interested in, where we read all of the article to get as much information as possible. So that's reading for detail, isn't it? Okay, so is listening the same?
Listening, if you listen to a programme for pleasure, which could be just something you're interested in, documentary on television, you're just listening for general information. You might listen to something or a song, exactly. You might listen to something in great detail. For example, you're at the station waiting for your train and you need to know what platform that your train is coming into. So you'll listen for that
specific information.
Specific information, yeah.
Right. And writing skills and speaking skills, we talk a little bit when we're talking about learners about the difference between accuracy and fluency. So in both writing and speaking. So in speaking, for example, we try and encourage students to be more fluent, to try out all the language that they know, because that's what they have to do when they're having a conversation. So these skills that we're talking about here, the receptive skills of scanning, skimming, reading for detail, listening for detail, these are skills that our learners have to learn. Not that they don't do it in their own language, but they need to learn to do it in a second language. And we need to provide materials that helps them to do that.
I think there's sometimes a tendency to do different things when you're teaching a second or a foreign language that you wouldn't need in your own language. Like getting students to understand every word in a text when they don't need to. There are very often words in your own language you don't understand, but you sort of understand them in context.
Or getting students to read out a whole newspaper article, out loud, one by one in class. When would we ever do that? So I think it's important as teachers that we think, would my students need to do this, read this thing, or would they need to write this? So we need to teach them to write emails.
I think purposeful activities for the skills.
Exactly.